not a secret that women's bodies are policed all the time, and our hair is just an extension of that. There's deeply ingrained societal expectations about what women should do with their bodies and their hair. Pressures that are felt even more strongly by women of colour who are inundated by expectations about white beauty and whiteness and white beauty standards. But as soon as you start looking at this topic, it opens up. We've got three amazing speakers here who are going to talk about just some of the things that are really important in the discussion about hair. But before we started, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my hair story, because I didn't realize that hair was even a thing before I went to visit my sister in China. She was living there at the time, and it was really, really hot. It was like Shanghai summer, I suppose, like here. And I was so fed up with my hair. I didn't know what to do with it. I'd never really been taught how to do my hair, that I went to the hairdresser and I asked them to chop it all off. And it was amazing. It was so liberating. My sister was like super excited for me. And when I came back to the UK, everybody assumed that when I was in China, I turned into a lesbian. So it actually didn't help that literally 4 weeks later I started dating a woman for the first time, and I was too nervous to tell anyone because I didn't want to reinforce the stereotype. But anyway, here's that's me having, not in China, but that's me having my hair cut. I had it really, really short, like that. So I just wanted to show you, and partly because I have quite boring hair now, I wanted you all to know for sure that I have had radical hair. So I just wanted to reinforce that idea. So, just a couple more things before we start. I spent much less money on my hair then than I do now. The annual, what's it called? $87 billion annually are spent on hair. Women spend 90% more than on their hair than men do. Hillary Clinton calls it the hair tax, the hair and beauty tax. She spends between 30 and 40 minutes every day getting her hair and makeup done. And you can imagine that's a lot of time in a busy person's life like hers. And also, she gets criticized for it, whatever she does. I reckon probably President Barack Obama spends 0.5 seconds on his hair, and nobody minds that he's going grey. And I think it's also an important point to make that Michelle Obama never came out of the White House with an Afro. So, you know, what does that tell us? In a recent survey from Cosmopolitan magazine, we're going on to a different type of hair now. Cosmopolitan magazine, women aged between 15 and 35, 57%, I was shocked about this, 57% go completely bald in the pubic hair region. Like absolutely no pubes. 57%. Some people trim, some people have a landing strip, and 6% go natural, complete bush, just in case you wanted to know.
Owen Gould, who is a massive hairdresser, said, hair holds so much more energy than most of us are aware. Some women use it as a security blanket whose purpose is to shield and protect, while others use it as a secret weapon to tease and entice. I'm not sure what I use it for. But here I am with a wig in Wizard of Oz that we did at La Boite a few years ago. And this is my normal look. This is when I'm distressed. And this is when I'm floating. This is in rehearsal when my director didn't like my haircut and made me wear a band. And that's hello, hi, here I am. So I have a few hair stories, and I really feel like quite ashamed of these hair stories because they're not terribly interesting. So I will act my tits off to make them interesting. And so when I was 5 years old, my mother was so tired of me giving her a hard time that she cut my plaits off when they were plaits. So I looked disgusting, and it embarrassed me for many years. The next thing that happened was we didn't have conditioner when I was a young person. We only had shampoo, and it was probably Sunlight soap. And so when I would wash my hair, it would stick out. Now I use product to do that. But back then, you wanted to have sleek hair. So I used to then put a scarf around my hair, sleep in it, and then go to school with flat hair. In the late 60s, remember Twiggy? She had this short pixie cut. Have I got the right person? Yes. And so I decided that that would look good on me. And so pretty much ever since, I've worn short hair. Except when I lived in the States, I trained as an actor in New York City, and I couldn't afford a haircut. So I used to cut my own fringe and then just let this go wild. It didn't look good. And no wonder I only got parts that I wasn't paid for. But I wasn't mature enough to understand that at the time. So I had my first one-person show back in the 70s called Alice and Mary Fagan. And it had 100 performances at the Ensemble Theatre. Some of you may know the Ensemble Theatre in Sydney. And I had to have a haircut for this show. And my designer brought me in a picture of David Bowie. And so ever since, I think I'm kind of stuck in that 70s zone because I've worn David Bowie's hair ever since, you know, in its glory. I grew my hair after New York City, and then when I came back a few years later, I got married, and like many women do in a time of transition, and in a sense I was in mourning because I'd had such a fabulous single life, and suddenly I had to grow up because I'd actually done it backwards, and I was pregnant with a baby. So we decided we had to be grown up. We got married, and I cut off my hair. And ever since then, I've never grown it. And number one, I don't have very pretty hair. So, you know, it's not a big loss to the world. But here I am now. I went through several years there. In 2003, I decided I'm not going to dye my hair ever again. This is ridiculous with these roots, having to pretend I'm some colour or not, because I always said, why pay for colour if it's going to look natural? So it always had to look like I had coloured my hair. But it started to grow out, and I thought, no, okay, so then I went into streaks. Yeah, we all did this probably. And then I went into coloured streaks. And I thought I looked fantastic. And when I look back at some of those photos, I couldn't even share them with you. They look so bad. And I thought that I was sort of like a bit cool. I wasn't. And I realise that now. So there's still a vanity about me. And when I knew that I was on this panel, I thought, oh my God, I've got to have a haircut. And I had, just like all of us, busy lives, couldn't fit in a haircut, but then made sure I did. And so I rang my hairdresser, who has a little salon at the back of her house. She's a mum of two, and I've been going to her, and I've got her cards afterwards if you like the cut. And I went there and she said, do you want me just to lighten it a bit? And my hair is usually white. And I thought, oh, that could look really good. I'm on a hair panel, so make it look good. And she did this steel colour, and I actually don't like it. So I came home. I love her, though. She's a great cutter. I came home and I've washed it probably 25 times in the last 3 days. I've toned it down. But really, without this slight steel colour, this is what I've got. and this is what I'll probably keep until I die, because they say that you get stuck in a period. And it's very hard to, even though you think you're going with the times, in fact you're not. So forgive me. Thank you.
So thanks for that, Margie. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things to do with going grey. So when you started to go grey, what was the decision-making process that you went through to kind of come out as a grey person?
Well, I was at my hairdresser's, and can I be expletive here? I said, fuck this, I'm not going to keep coming. This is ridiculous, and also the chemicals are bad for my body. And so we had a consultation, and we decided we'd do it gradually. Why? I'm not sure. It is so short. Sometimes I come out with hair this short. My kids have said, don't pick me up at school, your hair's too short. But we did it gradually. So we did streaks first of all, and then the streaks would grow, and then we'd do pink, and we'd do black, and then I started to see me walking down the street in other people. And I thought, oh no, I can't do this anymore. So I let the colours grow out. But every time I wanted to change, I would just pretty much shave the hair, like I'd leave there. And a girlfriend of mine hated it because you could see through to my scalp. I didn't care, but it really concerned her.
And obviously going grey is associated with ageing. And in a society that fetishizes youth, particularly I think for women, what was the reaction with your peer group when you just sort of went with your natural hair and grey hair?
I don't think anyone really cared. I was just Margie with grey hair. But I've got a loud voice. So that sort of counterbalanced the...
Yeah. Well, I'm 34, and I have quite grey hair, like particularly in my temples and the top there. I do have it dyed like every 3 months. Costs a fortune, actually. And I'm always in a sort of, shall I have it done or not? Somebody at work said to me about 6 months ago, when I hadn't had it done for a while, they said, it's quite confusing for people because you've got such a young face. I'm 34, did I say that? You've got such a young face, but then you've got all this grey hair. Do you find people being confused about it? And it really made me, I was quite cross with the person for saying that, because I thought, how dare you sort of reflect on my age based on my hair? And it made me really paranoid about it. So I think, grey hair and the pressure that people put on each other to dye their hair, and when it's grey, I think is sort of fascinating and not talked about enough. But
I just hope that, like in 2003, I started to go grey, and you know what I thought back then? I thought no one is ever going to notice me growing old, because I'm already old. And so, that's how many years ago? That's like 30 years ago, and I'm still the same.
You're ageless. Good tactic. So thanks so much, Margie. Sharon, I'm going to come to you now for your hair story.
I grew up with my grandfather, and my grandfather was always so into no hair. He would cut my hair. He would say, my grandmother had died, my mother had gone back to school, and he was the sole parent for myself and my other cousins. But he would cut my hair because he believed that hair was going to eat all the nutritions from my body, and I was going to be very skinny and I won't grow. That's what he said to me. It's only later on when I think about it and thought, maybe he had no idea what to do with my hair. So then he cut my hair. It was an easy way for me to get dressed and go to school every morning without having to worry about anything. As I grew up, around me, hair was something that we talked about, how it looked, how not so good it looked. When I was 12 years old, I was so tall and lean and no hair, no boobs. Sometimes people thought I looked like a boy. So the fact that I didn't have hair, people associated that as looking like a man, that I wasn't female or feminine enough. Girls around me were stretching their hair. They would use hot stone. You put it in the fire. You let it get quite hot, and then we use things to hold it, and you use it to stretch your hair. Because hair needed to be long and beautiful, and short, curly hair wasn't something that was appealing for girls, for themselves, and for the male counterpart. Men loved hair that was longer. And as I kept growing up and exploring how my identity looks like, how I am as me with hair, and learning a bit about our cultures, and learning a little bit about our history, and learning to exist in the world as a black woman, as an African woman, with my kinky, strong hair that I can hardly comb. I cannot put a comb through my hair. It hurts like hell. And having to use the dark and lovely, as they call it, hair straighteners, hair relaxers, just so that my hair can flow a bit and can be longer, and every time measuring the puff, can I hold it up? Can I put it in a bun? It's not growing enough. It's not growing very quickly. And I also, somehow deep inside of me, I resented the fact that my grandfather kept cutting my hair for so many years. And I thought, that is the reason why my hair is not growing. And that's why my hair is not going to be like others, and I won't be as beautiful enough. And I would take the braids and extensions and put them on, and, you know, just so that I can just look like I have hair that can grow long. Like, you know, I can create this story, this persona that I am, because I have hair. Really? You know, people have said African women used to have their head shaved because during colonization, people would admire something about them, and they didn't want that hair, or it didn't suit, something wrong with it. So you shave it off, you cut it off, and women would cut it off, or they would put the head wrap around it just to hide it. I know it's the story of many women in the United States. Because of slavery, they couldn't show their hair. They put the head wrap on so they can hide it. In my culture, I put a head wrap on because it's a sign of respect if I'm going to a wedding, a funeral, or some occasions that I like to look a little bit different, a little bit more glamorous, or whatever it is. We can own our stories about hair. I go to work every day, and whatever it is that I want to do, I do it with my hair. Whatever. I have taken the power of my own hair on how I look and how I want to look. You see this? Yes, I can put this in corporate Queensland Health, go into our building. They know that's Sharon. They have no problems with it. Can I touch your hair? I have said, yes, you can. Oh, how long does it take to do that? 6 hours. Oh my God. You sit for 6 hours just for your hair? Taking the power about my hair has been liberating for me. I can be whatever I want to be. And I really like to say, it is okay if you ask me about my hair. Some people might not like it. And it's okay for you to touch my hair if I give you permission to. Because we start to have a conversation about who I am. And I get to learn a bit more about you as well. However, it's so interesting, Domino, how people get, when I say, somebody of a different background, when I say, after they touch my hair, I say, can I touch your hair? Oh, you know, my hair is not as pretty as yours. My hair is, no, but you're curious about my hair. I'm curious about your hair too. Can we both have this conversation about hair? Let it not be just about my hair. Let it just be about hair.
Thank you. Can we want to ask a question about wearing hair natural? There was a case in South Africa, about 6 months ago, when a school had, which is full of young black girls, the school had banned the girls from going to school with their hair natural. Can you tell the audience a bit of background on that, like why that would be and the cultural significance, etc.?
The school, and I remember that very well because there was a young woman, I forgot her name, but there's a young girl, a young hero, a young fighter who stood and organized all the other girls and saying, this is our hair, we will wear it the way we want, this is our natural hair, you cannot ban us from coming to school being who we are. And it was just an incredible thing to see. It is because natural hair has always been seen, and for years, for centuries, African hair, that it is bad. It's not pretty enough. It is not pretty. It doesn't look pretty enough. It's not pretty enough. So at that school, it was not conforming to how the school wanted to present itself as, with students being neat and looking neat. So somehow in Africa, in South Africa, with young women with natural hair was not seen as pretty or neat enough for them to wear their hair to school the way they want to do.
And the damage that does psychologically when you're being told you can't come as you are, how your natural, how you are just every day, how your body is not good enough. And you internalize that idea. It's very dangerous, particularly for young people, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it has happened here in Australia as well, in Melbourne. There was a school that had said to young African Australian girls to not come to school with their braids. We know in the US, all around the world, people, when they have their dreadlocks, people say you cannot get a job with wearing, having dreadlocks. My son has dreadlocks. I was waiting when I was getting him enrolled at school for anyone to say that his dreadlocks were not suitable for this school's image. And I remember when I went to that interview, I said, by the way, my son has dreadlocks. Do you have a problem with that? And I was told, as long as it's neat, there's no problem. So he has dreadlocks. And that's how he is. And it's been so fortunate that the school has just embraced that. He's the only kid in the school with dreadlocks, and everybody knows him, and he loves it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sharon. Last but not least, Michelle, can you tell us your hair story?
Yes, I guess my hair story is interesting in the sense that a lot of these things I can't really relate to anymore because I'm bald. So I wear wigs just everyday life. I don't wear them at home at all. But I wasn't always bald. I started losing my hair when I was 13 years old, so first year of high school, perfect. So I'd always had, I always really took great pride in my hair because I was born and grew up on the Sunshine Coast, and it's quite a monocultural region. And the one thing that people sort of liked about me was the fact that I had, this black, silky Chinese hair, and people found that quite fascinating about me and, wanted to touch it. It wasn't until I hit adolescence and when I was 13 that it started to fall out in patches, and I didn't really know what was going on. And so my mum took me to a dermatologist, and then I found out I had alopecia, and it turns out the dermatologist didn't know that much about alopecia either. I remember his examples. He was like, a lot of celebrities have alopecia, like Sinead O'Connor. And I'm like, what? She voluntarily shaves her head. This isn't helping me, mate. And then I went to a specialist as well, and I met a trichologist who sort of helped me through that and gave me some treatments and things. But I've tried a variety of things like steroid topical ointments and things like that. But basically, I was sort of thrown into my first year of high school losing my hair, and it took, a couple of months until I went from having really thick black hair down past my shoulders to being almost completely bald. And I remember at the time, I guess maybe I was in a bit of shock because I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't have time to process it because it happened so quickly. And so I went through adolescence sort of just pushing on and not reflecting about it at all. And it didn't bother me too much, obviously until I was in a school environment. And in that sort of environment, you're getting a lot of questions from not only your peers, but even teachers. A lot of teachers who sort of told me off for not wearing the right headgear because I wore a bandana to cover my baldness, and they hadn't been briefed, obviously, so that was incredibly awkward. And my peers, obviously, they had a lot of questions about, are you a religious extremist now, or are you gay, or are you really, really sick? And I didn't feel like they were allowed to ask those questions, and so I just would say, I'm none of those things, and I'm not gravely ill, so it's really none of your business. And if people aren't familiar with alopecia, it's an autoimmune condition similar to lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and all of those conditions where your immune system mistakes a part of your body as being like a foreign body or a virus that it needs to take down. So I was bald in high school for about 3 years, and my hair grew back after that time, but during that period of baldness, it really, and especially at a time when you're quite hormonal and going through puberty and you really want that attention from people that you're romantically interested in, it really exposed me to the fact that not only femininity but gender is quite a sham. Like, it's all a performance and at best like an apparition, because I was still the exact same person, but a lot of people had certain perceptions of me based on what I looked like. And I felt like because I was bald, I wasn't allowed to be pretty, I wasn't allowed to be feminine, and I wore my brother's hand-me-down clothes, and I really made an effort to be quite unseen and wear like neutral colours and not have much of a voice, so I really sort of stifled myself. But in another sense, I'm quite grateful to it for that, and I'm quite grateful to it because it really made me develop my sense of self and my self-worth and my own sense of what makes someone good looking or attractive. Obviously there are surface level things that we're attracted to, but after my hair grew back at the end of high school, I sort of felt like, oh, all my problems are fixed and everything's fine again and I'm healed. But I just felt quite bereft and confused, like I was sort of grieving this identity that I had or I was supposed to have. And all throughout high school, I was sort of seen as like this sexless person who wasn't really worthy of attention. And then suddenly, as a young Asian woman, I was like preyed upon for being like an exotic object and someone who was quite objectively sexy because I had nice hair. And I felt really bitter about that and angry. And I felt so sick of men hitting on me because I'm like, you would never do this if I had hair. Sorry, if I didn't have hair. And so I've, throughout my adolescence and throughout my adult years, I'm 28 now, and my hair's fallen out, grown back completely, fallen out again, grown back and fallen out, and I'm bald again now. And you really have no control over it. It's not a life-threatening condition, but there's no cure. There's no cure, and it's more psychologically damaging than anything. Yeah, so I'm at a place now where I'm quite comfortable with it, and the show that I've got coming out on SBS is about young people and chronic illness, and it is quite semi-autobiographical. So I play a version of myself, and it's like a Michelle who as an adult gets alopecia for the first time, and what it's like to deal with chronic illness when you're a young person and you feel quite old.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Michelle does an amazing TED Talk, which earlier she told me she hasn't watched it for ages because she finds it too embarrassing. But I can say it's a fantastic talk that I urge you all to watch. And in that, you talk about your 3-step survival guide for bald women. And I thought, actually, this should be a 3-step survival guide for everyone. So I've asked Michelle to recreate it here.
Yes, I have not watched that talk since it went up. It's like when you hear your own voice on a recording and it's just like, oh. So I wrote this talk back when I was 22, I think, or 21, and I had to refer to my notes because I don't actually remember what I said. But these are obviously things that I try to live in my everyday life, so they're good reminders. And the first step is to know your own worth, and that your worth is... your worth is embedded in who you are, regardless of what gender you are, and being womanly is a part of that, but it also isn't, if that makes sense. It doesn't necessarily define your role as a person in society or your role in the family. It's just your hair. Like, your hair doesn't signify everything about you. So know inherently what your own self-worth is. The second step was, if you are bald, to embrace your baldness, because growing up I didn't have examples of pretty or bald women who are living normal lives. Like, when you see bald women, they're in movies and television, and they're psychopaths or they're villains or they're victims of torture. They're never just, driving a bus or like walking and exercising. So I had to really actively look for examples of normal, regular bald women leading normal lives, and I found a couple. There was like Gail Porter, who's a Scottish media figure, and Anna Fitzpatrick, who's a model in New Zealand. But just to embrace the fact that your hair isn't the be-all and end-all, and the fact that we've embraced so many other types of female baldness, like shaving our underarms and waxing our pubes, and like for some reason it's normal to do that. Like, why? And the third point is being visible. And that's being visible to other bald women and other women going through, perhaps chemotherapy, or they have trichotillomania, which is like a compulsion where you pull out your own hair, because there's this idea that when you're bald, you're someone to be pitied and you're less beautiful and you have less opportunities or you're sick, and really it doesn't mean anything at all.
Thank you so much. What you said about Gail Porter and the news.
Anna Fitzpatrick.
So both of those women are conventionally beautiful in their sort of tall, thin bodies and their beautiful faces. So to kind of get away with also being bald, as if it kind of balances out in some way. I wanted to talk about hair and self-esteem, actually, and we had a bit of a chat about that, Margi, because you're obviously a psychotherapist, and I want to ask you a bit about where you think the link with women, hair, and self-esteem is.
I think there's a huge link, and I think that we look in the mirror when we get up and we either have a good hair day or a bad hair day. And it's been documented, and many of us have probably done it. I certainly have. When things get tough, you cut your own hair, and sometimes that's very extreme. I've played characters who've cut their own hair, and I find that quite exciting. But it's also indicative that you have gone through change. I think that you feel good when you've got a good cut and you've got your product. I'm out of product at the moment. That's why I'm wearing the band. I think hair is, we turn up and our hair is the first thing we see. It frames the face. And so hand up everyone who's having a good hair day.
Quite a lot of people. That's really good.
Hand up those people who are having a shit hair day. Yeah, there you go. So
you look fabulous.
I just hope that your esteem isn't too low.
Sharon, with gender in mind particularly, how is Afro hair gendered? Are men having this conversation about their hair? What's going on there? I
would really love to hear men talking about hair the way we talk about hair as women. How we look, what we do, the kind of hairstyles we do, we talk about it, we do it, we share it. It's so incredibly part and parcel of our existence, and there is a movement, the hair movement, around the world right now, where women, and this has happened obviously, these kind of movements with hair styles come and go, but currently is having short hair, cutting it very, very short, like brush cut, and very particularly for a lot of women in down south of Africa, and it's about the rejection of how African women should look, the rejection of saying having long straight hair is what is beautiful, and when you see women don't see, they say you can't be what you can't see. A lot of women don't see, especially African women, don't see African women on TV with short hair or with Afro hair, with it's still something that people are not seeing. It's not there.
Yeah, that was the point about Michelle Obama. When somebody pointed that out to me, I thought it was so striking, because of course she does have an Afro, but
absolutely,
you just never see it, and it says so much about how that's valued.
Yeah, but also to recognize that we have different textures of hair as well. So our hair is not just, mine is just that kinky, that whatever you can't do anything with. But I have my sister on the other side who her hair is actually quite softer. And she could have it grows longer, and it's just completely different texture from my hair. So regardless of what it is, we as women have different, even African women, does not mean that our hair is that kinky and nasty or whatever it is that we've been, we refer it to, that they can also be. We have different versions of it, and we should all be proud of it. And really, do men really care that much? Do they?
Yeah, they probably...
They do? Yeah, they want it straight?
It's a growing market, actually. It's not just the hair here, but it's
Beard hair.
It is a growing market. So if we talk about the economies of hair,
Yeah.
because the economies of hair, the cost of hair, where, especially in the Southern African region, in my country, Botswana, and South Africa as well, where you are having young women who believes that a hair that long and silky, we have, Brazilian hair, we have yaki hair from Indian hair that we buy and we sew into our head to look long and lush. And it costs incredible. It's the amount of money that hair costs. So young women who are not able to afford because they come from underprivileged background are having men way older themselves, and they call them blessers. That's the word. The man becomes a blesser because he blesses the young woman with getting the hair and being able to get them to afford the hair. They buy them the hair. And I've seen videos on Facebook and all of that. I mean, it's just, literally, it's incredible. It's something that it's where men, when they separate from the woman, and you see them walking in the streets and then grabbing the wig off their hair because that wig costed them a lot of money, and now you're going to take that and go with another person. Yes, it is like, what? But that is what happens when hair and the economics of hair changes the community.
I think there's the fundamental difference, I think, between men taking care of their hair and women taking care of their hair is that for the longest time women's value has been based on how they look and men's value has been based on what they think, largely, obviously not in all cases, but so of course the investment in terms of time and money is going to be different with women. But that's not to play down that self-esteem issues and body issues with men. In fact, WOW has a brother festival called BAM, Being a Man, where lots of these issues are discussed between many different communities of men. And the hardest community of men, which is probably predictable to get in to have conversations, are the straight, white, able-bodied, tall, middle-class, heterosexual men. So they're the ones that don't want to do the chatting. But anyway, I digress.
Thanks. Probably more of an observation than a question, but I recently shaved my head for Shave for a Cure for the Leukemia Foundation, and my husband was going to do it. That's what got me started, and at the last minute he chickened out, which disgusted me. But, in the lead up to it, everybody kept commenting on how brave I was for shaving my head, yet nobody ever said that to my husband. And it didn't seem at all brave for him to do it, and it became a real feminist thing to me that I thought, well, stuff it, I'm really going to shave my head now then. And it didn't occur to me that there was any problem with it. I'm quite comfortable with it being, I went from having very long blonde hair to being bald, and it didn't bother me one bit. However, about 2 weeks ago, I was standing in a line at a shop, and a very old man behind me tapped me on the shoulder and said, "So do you have cancer, or is that some kind of political statement?" And I was sort of shocked and said, "Well, I'd shaved my head for Shave for a Cure." He then lectured me for more than I should have stood and listened to about how, he said, did your husband approve of that? And I said, well, I didn't actually think I needed to check my husband's approval for that. He lectured me on how men like something pretty to look at, and by shaving my head, I've ruined my end, or I've let down my end of the marriage bargain, because hair's what makes you pretty. And I stood there dumbfounded, and then he said, your husband must be a better man than me if he's willing to look at that across the dinner table.
Wow.
Well, I can't repeat what I then said. I'm not in the habit of swearing at octogenarians, but I let loose with some colourful language. So yes, not really a question, I guess, just a commentary on how, we really are. I lived in a world where I didn't think I was defined by my hair, but I was quite shocked by that.
Yeah,
so.
It's really indicative that there is an actual patriarchy, because when you reject it by chopping off your hair, people get really, really cross. They don't like it. Any more questions? We've got one over here.
short hair is often looked at a sign of not just boyness, which I also, as a child, was. My mother also cut my hair, and now I'm also very, very grey. And thankfully in India, grey is in style, so I don't have to worry anymore. But I mean, it's also often kind of very stereotypically, at least in my context, said this is a lesbian, therefore she has short hair, because why else would, because she's not in the business of attracting men, because why else would she cut her hair? So I was wondering if the panel would like to reflect on that.
Who'd like to pick that one up?
Well, let me just, in African, in a lot of African cultures, it's never, I mean, short hair is not seen as, is not linked to sexuality. It's often just people thinking that you're a man, a boy, rather than your preference, your sexual preference. And that could also be because the conversation about sexuality and people from LGBTIQ is not a conversation that often happens in a lot of African cultures. So that could be the reason why that people don't link the short hair to someone being of preference to whatever, someone being of a different sexual orientation.
Do you want to comment?
I guess because I grew up, like my mum had quite short hair when she was raising my siblings and I, because she had 5 kids and just didn't have time to do her hair. So it never really occurred to me that it was like a signifier of your sexual orientation until I lost my hair. And that was, I guess, quite an extreme version because it wasn't even shaving. It was just like completely losing it. And there were a lot of assumptions of like, oh, you're gay, which is like totally fine, but I'm not gay. So it sort of just... I guess people took it as a symbol for something else. And I guess that for me was constricting because then I felt like I wasn't allowed, didn't have permission to look feminine. And so I never wore dresses. If I wore skirts, they were like brown and boring. And yeah, I guess it took me a long time to unlearn that. And I was always growing up like a very girly girl. And then once that happened, like my style changed a lot.
Thank you. I think you answered your own question there, really. But because it's about that rejection. You know, why would you not prioritize being attractive to men?
Yeah.
And so that must mean that you're a lesbian. But I'm also fascinated when people say, oh, all lesbians have short hair. But how do you know? Because if they had long hair, you wouldn't think that they were a lesbian. So you sort of end up going round in circles. I think sometimes the opposite is true for older women. When older women have long hair, there's a lot of criticism around that.
Because as women get older, we become more invisible and you lose your sexual currency. And so it's like expected that you have short hair because why would you even bother trying to be attractive? So, you know, you learn that as an early teenager into your older age, and that's just all tied up with how much you're worth sexually to men.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Michelle. You hit the nail on the head.
Hi, I just wanted to say, as an older woman, I'm fighting all these indications that I need to cut my hair short. I hate my hair anyway, and really I do need to have it cut short, but I'm fighting it because, like you were saying, the expectation is as you get to a certain age, you cut it. But I just want to get some agreement on it. When I do cut it, it'll be because I can't be bothered to do it anymore. That's all.
Keep the microphone. When you say you hate your hair, what do you mean?
Well, it's fine. It goes limp in this weather. I mean, I'm from the UK, so I'm not used to this heat, and it's just horrendous. Tomorrow when I get up, I'm not even going to wash it. I'm just going to tie it up and go. But hair's important. I do think it's not about attracting men. It's about I like to feel nice. I want to look nice for me. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm single and have been happily single for a long time. I wouldn't have a man thrown at me. However, I still want want to look nice, you know, and there's that thing that, well, why do you want to look nice now because you're 62? Well, because I want to look nice. End of. And when I stop wanting to look nice, it'll be because I'm tired and I don't want to do it anymore.
I have to agree with you that this weather is absolutely terrible. It's the dampness, isn't it? It makes your hair go all frizzy. I straightened my hair this morning, which I do every morning, and
I think about hair looking like this.
well, from where I'm sat, it's fabulous. It looks fabulous. All right, I'll make sure I do it. I'll keep the illusion alive. Any more? We've got one question over there, and then I'll come to you. Oh, have I missed someone? Who should go first? Yeah, let's go you first, and then we'll go in order.
Sorry, everybody, I didn't mean to get in the queue. I'd just like to make an observation. I thank my 3 boys, because having them, I never had any time to bother about my hair. But I remember working with a woman who had to wash it every day, and she was the most tortured person I've ever worked with in relationship to her hair. And every day we heard about her relationship with her washed hair. I wonder if any of you'd like to comment.
Would anyone like to comment?
Just that I think we have met before.
Was her hair long or short?
In between.
In between?
And beautifully curled.
Well, just let her. You know, that's what she needed to do. But I have a question. And my question is, I always thought it was easier to have long hair than short hair. And yet
Depends
I'm
what hair
hearing
you've got.
tonight the opposite.
But it depends what hair you've got. There's a multiplicity of hair. Yeah, I'm sure you win the easy front.
I may never grow again.
Yeah, but I didn't mean to dismiss. It might have sounded dismissal, but what I need to say is I think that woman would be tortured whatever it was, you know. So let it be a hair. Yeah.
That's the psychotherapist in her talking. I think for me, how long it takes me to look like this. I don't look like this every day. You know, Bantu knots is what I have done right now. It's just, I have long braids, so I've just kind of made them into little knots around my hair. And it symbolizes a very common hairstyle in a lot of Bantu-speaking people in the southern and central Africa. And it's something that they do with their natural hair, and it has been done for centuries. And I do this with braids, and it just makes me feel incredibly beautiful and incredibly African. Incredibly, you know, just everything really. I really love it. So, but I don't look like this every day. I get home, I take this off immediately. I mean, I can show you. It just, see? Yeah. So I've just made that, and I'll just get you to hold the mic while I twist it again, just to show you how I do it. Just it's very easy. So I just do this. Yeah. And that's it. Easy peasy.
But so how do you have to clip it in to keep it there, or do you just tuck it?
I didn't clip it, just it.
So you just tuck it in?
And it just sits there.
Amazing.
Sometimes I'll be walking and I can feel it's just kind of come off. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just going to have to fix it again. That's it. So I love mirrors. Whenever I pass by the mirror, I look just to ensure that my hair is in place.
But in answer to your question, I think Margie sort of hit the nail on the head there. But I do also sympathise, because she probably feels like she can't just shave it off and get rid of it because of everything we've just talked about. And also you're having to deal with it every day. So It shouldn't be a conundrum, but it shouldn't be seen as a frivolous conundrum or one that she shouldn't be allowed to have, because it is on your head and everyone's looking at it all day. Lady in the red.
Thank you. I will ask a question first and then tell you my story. So, is there something wrong with me? That's my question. When I was born with straight hair. And when I was 12, it was in fashion, I think, for a woman to have a short hair. So my dad really liked women in sport, and he decided to cut my hair really short. But at 12, my hair started getting curly. So I really looked odd. It wasn't curls like this that I have today. It was really strange. So kids started bullying me. They called me cabbage. And because I aced maths and had this ugly hair, they thrown rocks at me. So luckily I was out of the country for 5 months, went with my family to the States, got back. In 5 months my hair became like this. And I started growing it because I really liked it. But then they were saying, oh, you put some product on it. It's not natural. Who cares? You know, it's so easy for me. I love it. And I haven't changed since I was 15. And I don't want to change. I can change the clothes. I can change anything else. I don't want to change my hair because it's so easy. I don't do anything. I just wash it. That's all I did this morning. So I have people coming to me and saying, aren't you bored with your hair? You always look the same. But honestly, is there something wrong with me? Am I wrong? Like I can put...
No, it's your friends.
They're not my friends. Oh, but it's easy. It's so easy. I love it. And I won't cut it when I get older.
There's a lady down here who wants to comment.
So just to say, I had straight hair till I went through puberty, and then I went really, really curly and had really, really wrinkly hair. So nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with me. When I grew up in the 70s as a kid, and it was long straight hair was it. And then I went to the UK with mum and dad, and my hair went really, really curly. And then luckily the 80s curly. Yeah. And now it's kind of come down a bit because it's, a bit of...
I tried to straighten it, but it gets back to curls in like literally 1 hour.
But just to say, you are beautiful and phenomenal, and I can't believe they gave you that shit. Sorry.
Yes.
You are stunning. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the answer's no, basically. It's easy. Nothing wrong with you. Right, another question was somewhere. Oh, yes, here. Another question around here. Okay. Statements are good too?
Yes. So I've been a stylist all of my life.
Ooh.
And there's two things I thought of that I should share with you. And one was I had a lady come into the salon to sit down to have her long, beautiful locks cut. And her husband came in and he said to me, if you cut her hair short, I will kill you. And he wasn't joking. Like, he actually really wasn't joking. And so I asked him to leave. And I said that I would communicate with her about her hair because it's her hair. So that was just one thing I wanted to share that I always remember because it was really strange.
What did you do?
I asked him to leave, and then I cut her hair. Yeah.
Did she want it short?
No. But I think it's referencing a couple of things. It was my appearance.
Oh, I see.
His control. I've seen it. I've honestly seen it all. Yeah. Something else I wanted to mention was hair cutting for a long time. So I have a lot of short hair clients and I have a lot of long hair clients. And it didn't matter how long I'd been doing somebody's hair that was long. Every time they sat down, they'd make the joke to me, "Don't make me look like you." And I'd say, I've been doing your hair for 15 years. Why do you say that to me every time? It's really boring. Like, don't you feel fantastic every time you leave? Don't you, we do everything that you want, all of the things. And I'm just really intrigued by that. So women are incredible in this realm of hair and story. It's really, and continue to come to me for another 10 years. You know, like, it's not about what I do for them. It's about commenting on, you know, my...
The fear comes from fear, doesn't
and
it?
so I used to make lots of jokes about, so butch is not what you're here for today. So that's what you think mine is? So let's talk about that for a second. And so then once I made them sort of talk about it, it's like, it's so ridiculous.
We had an amazing show in WOW London just this year called the Butch Monologues. It was based, you know, it's a bit like the Vagina Monologues, where butch identifying women and trans men come and tell their stories just on this simple stage like this. And so many of those stories were about hair as well, and the transformation that they went under as they started to embrace their butch identities. So thank you so much for those two comments. Does anyone else have any questions? We've got Lysa there, and then we've got a person here. So let's traverse the room in that direction. So, there first, and then there, and then we'll come across here.
Just wanting to comments on professionalism and hair. I have a friend who used to colour her hair in very vibrant colours. She went purple, pink, blue, and everyone that she'd meet, and even our friends, would comment on how she didn't seem very professional anymore, and she wasn't going to be able to get a job or any of that kind of stuff.
Does anyone want to comment?
Yeah, I always find that interesting. I'm married to a corporate man, and I went through lots of colour. And if people didn't take me seriously, I had to talk to them. You know, I think that it is the, perhaps your friend just needs to not take that. And I know that's a difficult message, but it's like we can kowtow, and I mean, I've experienced this because I work in corporate life sometimes, and there are some times when they're not interested, they first look. So I often bring my husband along, who's very straight looking, and then balance it that way. I say, yeah, I understand that story, but this is how I want to present myself. And, you know, maybe that's what your friend could do. And if not, then don't go coloured, you know. It's a responsibility when you go colour.
It shouldn't be down to having a strong personality like you have to be able to make whatever choices you want about your hair and, frankly, anything else. Yeah.
It is so sad that it has to be, because sometimes people think I get away with it because I am Sharon, you know, and I have quite a strong personality. You know, how could you, are you sure you go to work like that? I said, yeah, why not? This is who I am, this is how I express myself, and I like myself this way. So fortunately, I have not yet had someone saying, that look doesn't suit here. And oh gosh, God knows what would happen if that ever happens.
I once at school dyed my hair pink. I was desperate to rebel, and so I dyed my hair pink. I think I was 16. My mum did it, and then I went into school the next day and immediately got suspended. My mum and dad came to pick me up from school, and then the next day they got hauled into Mrs. Warrington's office, headmistress, and to sort of get a telling off. And my dad, who has not grey hair but white hair and a short white beard, dyed his beard green. Went in and said, "Do you have a problem?" Anyway, so that's, yes, anyone else want to comment on the professionalism? Michelle? Cool. So next question just behind there. Thank you.
I'm just curious about whether you think hair is more important than clothes that you wear. You know, Margi, you mentioned that, you know, you see your hair first, it frames your face, but is hair less or more important than the garments?
Well, for me, I think it's more important, but I think everybody would have a different idea. But for me, I like to see people experiment with their hair. Their clothes are fine too, but I think, because I like to look at people's faces. What about you?
I don't know, because, I wear some sparkly things and, had crazy hair and what, I don't know, it just is, I'm just am. So I can't answer that. I don't know which one is important.
I would argue that hair is a garment, because for me it is. And because I've been forced to do this, I now see it as a garment, and it's something that you choose to put out there in whatever style that you have got at the moment. So you're making an active choice to wear something regardless, even if it is on your body.
I think because your hair is actually growing out of your head, it's a reflection of you. Like you were talking about, your hair was straight and then it was curly and then you started to get bullied. But your clothes, you can choose whichever ones to put on. So maybe hair, I would maybe argue, if I had to, that hair was more important because it's more of a directly reflection of yourself because you're growing it. I've been a very naughty facilitator and I've just noticed the time. Please give it up for the amazing panelists today. Woo! And thank you. Enjoy the rest of the festival. Talk to people that you don't know. Get involved and see you later.